Chapter 26, The Science of Kriya Yoga. The science of Kriya Yoga mentioned so often in these pages becomes widely known in modern India through the instrumentality of Larari Masha, my guru's guru. The Sanskrit root of Kriya is Kri, to do, to act and react. The same root is found in the word karma, the natural principle of cause and effect. Kriya Yoga is thus union, or yoga, with the infinite through a certain act or rite. A yogi who faithfully follows its technique is gradually freed from karma, or the universal chain of causation. Because of certain ancient yogic injunctions, I cannot give a full explanation of Kriya Yoga in the pages of this book, intended for the general public. The actual technique must be learned from a Kriyaban, or a Kriya Yogi. Here a broad reference must suffice. Kriya Yoga is a simple psychophysiological method by which the human blood is decarbonized and recharged with oxygen. The atoms of this extra oxygen are transmuted into life current to rejuvenate the brain and spinal centers. By stopping the accumulation of venous blood, the yogi is able to lessen or prevent the decay of tissue. The advanced yogi transmutes his cell into pure energy. Elijah, Jesus, Kabir, and other prophets were past masters in the use of Kriya or a similar technique, by which they caused their bodies to dematerialize at will. Kriya is an ancient science. Larry Masha received it from his guru Babaji, who'd rediscovered and clarified the technique after it had been lost in the Dark Ages. The Kriya Yoga, which I am giving to the world through you in this 19th century, Babaji told Larry Masha, is a revival of the same science which Krishna gave millennium ago to Arjuna, and which was later known to Patanjali and to Christ, St. John, St. Paul, and other disciples. Kriya Yoga is referred to by Krishna, India's greatest prophet, in a stanza of the Bhagavad Gita, offering inhaling breath into the outgoing breath, and offering the outgoing breath into the inhaling breath. The yogi neutralizes both these breaths. He thus releases the life force from the heart and brings it under his control. The interpretation is, the yogi arrests decay in the body by an addition of life force, and arrests the mutations of growth in the body by apan, eliminating current, thus neutralizing decay and growth. By quieting the heart, the yogi learns life control. Krishna also relates that it was he, in a former incarnation, who communicated the indestructible yoga to the ancient Illuminato, Vivasvat, who gave it to Manu, the great legislator. He in turn instructed Ikshwaku, the father of the India's solar warrior dynasty. Passing thus from one to another, the royal yoga was guarded by the rishis until the coming of the materialistic ages. Then, due to priestly secrecy and man's indifference, the sacred knowledge gradually became inaccessible. Kriya Yoga is mentioned twice by the ancient sage Patanjali, foremost exponent of yoga, who wrote, Kriya Yoga consists of body discipline, mental control, and meditating on Om. Patanjali speaks of God as the actual cosmic sound of Om, heard in meditation. Om is the creative word, the sound of the vibratory motor. Even the yoga beginner soon inwardly hears the wondrous sound of Om. Receiving his blissful spiritual encouragement, the devotee becomes assured that he is in actual touch with divine realms. Patanjali refers a second time to the life controller Kriya technique thus, liberation can be accomplished by that pranayama, which is attained by disjoining the course of inspiration and expiration. St. Paul knew Kriya Yoga, or a technique very similar to it, by which he could switch life currents to and from the senses. He was therefore able to say, Verily I protest by a rejoicing which I have in Christ. I die daily. By daily withdrawing his bodily life force, he united it by yoga union with the rejoicing of the Christ consciousness. In that fallacious state, he was consciously aware of being dead to the delusive sensory world of Maya. In the initial stages of God contact, Sabbakalpa Samadhi, the devotee's consciousness merges with the cosmic spirit. His life force is withdrawn from the body, which appears dead or motionless and rigid. The yogi is fully aware of his bodily condition of suspended animation. As he progresses to higher spiritual states, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, however, he communes with God without bodily fixation, and in his ordinary waking consciousness, even in the midst of exacting worldly duties. Kriya Yoga is an instrument through which human evolution can be quickened. Sri Yukteswar explained to his students. The ancient yogis discovered that a secret of cosmic consciousness is intimately linked with breath mastery. This is India's unique and deathless contribution to the world's treasury of knowledge. The life force, which is ordinarily absorbed in maintaining the heart pump, must be freed for higher activities by a method of calming and stilling the ceaseless demands of the breath. The Kriya Yogi mentally directs his life energy to revolve upward and downward around the 6 spinal centers: medullary, cervical, dorsal, lumbar, sacral, and coxal plexuses, which correspond to the 12 astral signs of the zodiac, the symbolic cosmic man. 1/2 minute of revolution of energy around this sensitive spinal cord of man effects subtle progress in his evolution. That 1/2 minute of Kriya equals 1 year of natural spiritual unfoldment. The astral system of a human being with 6, or 12 by polarity, inner constellations revolving around the sun of the omniscient spiritual eye, is interrelated with the physical sun and the 12 zodiacal signs. All men are thus affected by an inner and an outer universe. The ancient rishis discovered that man's earthly and heavenly environment, in 12-year cycles, push him forward on his natural path. The scriptures aver that man requires 1,000,000 years of normal, diseaseless evolution to perfect his human brain sufficiently to express cosmic consciousness. 1,000 Kriya practiced in 8 hours gives the yogi in 1 day the equivalent of 1,000 years of natural evolution. 365,000 years of evolution in 1 year. In 3 years, a Kriya yogi can thus accomplish by intelligent self-effort the same result which nature brings to pass in 1,000,000 years. The Kriya shortcut, of course, can be taken only by deeply developed yogis. With the guidance of a guru, such yogis have carefully prepared their bodies and brains to receive the power created by intensive practice. The Kriya beginner employs his yogic exercises only 14 to 28 times, twice daily. A number of yogis achieve emancipation in 6 or 12, 24, or 48 years. A yogi who dies before achieving full realizations carries with him the good karma of his past Kriya effort. In his new life, he is harmoniously propelled toward his infinite goal. The body of the average man is like a 50-watt lamp, which cannot accommodate the 1,000,000,000 watts of power roused by an excessive practice of Kriya. Through gradual and regular increase of the simple and foolproof methods of Kriya, man's body becomes astrally transformed day by day, and is finally fitted to express the infinite potentials of cosmic energy, the first materially active expression of spirit. Kriya Yoga has nothing in common with the unscientific breathing exercises taught by a number of misguided zealots. Their attempts to forcibly hold breath in the lungs is not only unnatural, but decidedly unpleasant. Kriya, on the other hand, is accompanied from the very beginning by an ascension of peace and by soothing sensation of regenerative effect in the spine. The ancient yogic technique converts the breath into mind. By spiritual advancement, one is able to cognize the breath as an act of a mind, a dream breath. Many illustrations could be given of the mathematical relationship between man's respiratory rate and the variations in his state of consciousness. A person whose attention is wholly engrossed, as in following some closely knit intellectual argument, or in attempting some delicate or difficult physical feat, automatically breathes very slowly. Fixity of attention depends on slow breathing. Quick or uneven breath are an inevitable accompaniment of harmful emotional states: fear, lust, anger. The restless monkey breathes at the rate of 32 times a minute, in contrast to a man's average of 18 times. The elephant, tortoise, snake, and other animals noted for their longevity have a respiratory rate which is less than man's. The tortoise, for instance, may attain the age of 300 years, breathes only 4 times a minute. The rejuvenating effect of sleep are due to man's temporary unawareness of body and breathing. The sleeping man becomes a yogi. Each night he unconsciously performs the yogic rite of releasing himself from bodily identification and of merging the life force with healing currents in the main brain region and 6 sub-dynamos of his spiritual center. The sleeper thus dips unknowingly into the reservoir of cosmic energy which sustains all life. The voluntary yogi performs a simple, natural process consciously, not unconsciously like the slow-paced sleeper. The Kriya yogi uses his technique to saturate and feed all his physical cells with undecaying light and keep them in a magnetized state. He scientifically makes breath unnecessary without producing the state of subconscious sleep or unconsciousness. By Kriya, the outgoing life force is not wasted and abused in the senses, but constrained to reunite with subtler spinal energies. By such reinforcement of life, the yogi's body and brain cells are electrified with the spiritual elixir. Thus he removes himself from studied observance of natural laws, which can only take him by circuitous means as given by proper food, sunlight, and harmonious thoughts, to a million-year goal. It needs 12 years of normal healthful living to effect even slight perceptible change in mind structure, and 1 million solar returns are exacted to sufficiently refine the cerebral tenement for a manifestation of cosmic consciousness. Untying the cord of breath which binds the soul to the body, Kriya serves to prolong life and enlarge the consciousness to infinity. The yoga method overcomes the tug-of-war between the mind and the matter, bound senses, and frees the devotee to re-inherit his internal kingdom. He knows his real nature is bound neither by physical encasement nor by breath, symbol of the mortal enslavement to air, to nature's elemental compulsions. Introspection, or sitting in the silence, is an unscientific way of trying to force apart the mind and senses, tied together by the life force. The contemplative mind, attempting its return to divinity, is constantly dragged back toward the senses by the life current. Kriya, controlling the mind directly through the life force, is the easiest, most effective, and most scientific avenue to approach to the infinite. In contrast to the slow, uncertain, bullock cart theological path to God, Kriya may justly be called the airplane route. The yogic science is based on an empirical consideration of all forms of concentration and meditation exercise. Yoga enables a devotee to switch off or on at will life current from the 5 sense telephones of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Attaining this power of sense disconnection, the yogi finds it simple to unite his mind at will with divine realms or with the world of matter. No longer is he unwilling, brought back by life force to the mundane sphere of rowdy sensations and restless thoughts. Master of his body and mind, the Kriya Yogi ultimately achieves victory over the last enemy, death. So shalt thou now feed of death that feeds on men, and death once fed, there is no more dying then. The life of an advanced Kriya Yogi is influenced not by effects of past actions, but solely by directions from the soul. The devotee thus avoids the slow evolutionary monitors of egoistic actions, good and bad, of common life, circumbrous and snail-like to the eagle hearts. The superior method of soul living frees the yogi, who, shorn of his ego prison, tastes the deep air of omnipresence. The thraldom of natural living is, in contrast, set in a pace humiliating. Conforming his life to the evolutionary order, a man can command no concessionary haste from nature, but living without error against the laws of his physical and mental endowment still requires about 1 million years of incarnating masquerades to know final emancipation. The telescopic methods of yogis, disengaging themselves from physical and mental identification in favor of soul individuality, thus commend themselves to those who eye with a revolt 1,000 years. This numerical periphery is enlarged for the ordinary man, who lives in harmony not even with nature, let alone his soul, but pursues instead unnatural complexities, thus offending in his body and thoughts the sweet sanities of nature. For him, 2 times 1 million years can scarce suffice for liberation. Gross man seldom or never realizes that his body is a kingdom, governed by Emperor Soul on the throne of the cranium, with subsidiary regents in the 6 spinal centers or spheres of consciousness. This theocracy extends over the throng of obedient subjects, 27,000 billion cells endowed with a sure if automatic intelligence by which they perform all duties of bodily growth, transformations, and disillusions in 50 million substratal thoughts, emotions and variations of alternating phases in man's consciousness in an average life of 60 years. Any apparent insurrection of bodily or cerebral cells toward Emperor Soul, manifesting as disease or depression, is due to not disloyalty among the humble citizens, but to past or present misuses by man of his individuality or free will, given to him simultaneous with a soul and revocable never. Identifying himself with a shallow ego, man takes for granted that it is he who thinks, wills, feels, digests meals, and keeps himself alive, never admitting through reflection, only a little would suffice, that in his ordinary life he is not but a puppet of past actions, karma, and of nature or environment. Each man's intellectual reactions, feelings, moods, and habits are circumscribed by effects of past causes, whether of this or a prior life. Lofty above such influences, however, is his regal soul. Spurning the transitory truth and freedom, the Kriya Yogi passes beyond all disillusionment into his unfettered being. All scriptures declare man to be not a corruptible body, but a living soul. By Kriya, he is given a method to prove the scriptural truth. Outward ritual cannot destroy ignorance, because they are not mutually contradictory, wrote Shankara in his famous Century of Verses. Realized knowledge alone destroys ignorance. Knowledge cannot spring up by any other means than inquiry. Who am I? How was this universe born? Who is its maker? What is its material cause? This is the kind of inquiry referred to. The intellect has no answer for these questions, hence the rishis involved yoga as a technique of spiritual inquiry. Kriya Yoga is the real fire rite, often extolled in the Bhagavad Gita. The purifying fires of yoga brings eternal illumination, and thus differ much from the outward and little effective religious fire ceremonies, where perception of truth is often burnt to solemn chanted accompaniment along with the incense. The advanced yogi, withholding all his mind, will, and feeling from false identification with bodily desires, uniting his mind with superconscious forces in the spiral shrines, thus lives in this world as God hath planned, not impelled by impulses from the past, nor by new listlessness of fresh human motivations. Such a yogi receives a fulfillment of his supreme desire, safe in the final haven of inexhaustibly blissful spirit. The yogi offers his labyrinthal human longings to the monotheistic bonfire dedicated to the unparalleled God. This is indeed the true yogic fire ceremony, in which all past and present desires are fuel consumed by love divine. The ultimate flame receives the sacrifice of all human madness, and man is pure of dross. His bones stripped of all desirous flesh, his karmic skeleton bleached in an antiseptic sun of wisdom, he is clean at last, inoffensive before man and maker. Referring to yoga's sure and methodical efficacy, Lord Krishna praises the technological yogi in the following words. The yogi is greater than body-disciplining ascetics, greater even than the followers of the path of wisdom, jnana yoga, or the path of action karma yoga. Be thou, O disciple Arjuna, a yogi. End of chapter.